Welcome to the East County Sports Report. I'm Ramon Scott. I'm joined by Dave Dickens of EastCountySports.com. Dave, we're going to talk about the final week of the high school football regular season, week 11, in just a moment. But I want to start off the show. We're going live here on Wednesday night, and I want to just mention right here on East County Sports Report, congratulations to former West Hills High School star Steven Strasburg. I say star, Dave. He really wasn't even a star on the Wolfpack teams. He was pretty good, but he didn't get a lot of wins. He had a pretty low ERA and went on to a great career at San Diego State. And, of course, won 2 games in the World Series. Just a tremendous accomplishment for you remember he signed that big contract, maybe the biggest contract ever signed by any athlete out of the East County. Very few professional athletes have made more money than Steven Strasburg. Maybe Jimmy Johnson. You want to include kind of, where we're at in today's society and who's accomplishing things. But Steven Strasburg, Dave, the most valuable player of the World Series. I think the biggest thing was after he gave up those runs in the first inning of yesterday's game, he got a tip from his pitching coach that maybe the way he was holding his grip inside his glove was tipping his pitches. The pitching coach gave him some advice. Strasburg started to shake his glove and basically shut down the Houston Astros for the remainder of the game. They won that game 6, went on to win game 7 tonight. So congratulations to Steven Strasburg. I think East County and West Hills High be pretty proud of him.
I'm sure they were, and I sure wish we even had a guest that could come on behalf of him, since he coached him for a little bit. And that would be Tony Gwynn, Sr. I'd sure like to have Tony Gwynn up here. I can't even imagine. I bet you'd have a tear in his eye knowing that Strasburg went on and did what he did in the World Series. I'm sure that would have been huge for Tony, too, being a San Diego guy. But big things happen. I think we tend to forget about the East County and how many products, particularly in baseball, that we release all the time. But we could talk about that in a couple of months here. But congratulations again to the Nationals, and I'm sure DC is just going nuts at this point in time, and they did such a good job. And now, though, let's shift gears and let's move on to the last week of the regular season for prep football in East County.
Yeah, let's do that. We're a little late because we were talking World Series. But, Dave, the undefeated Steel Canyon Cougars are apparently a decided underdog against the top-ranked Helix Highlanders this Friday night when the teams will decide the Grossmont Hills League Championship. The stakes are of the highest possible reward for a high school football player, Dave, in San Diego County, winning a league championship. The teams will meet on Campo Road this Friday at 7 p.m. To the victor will go the Grossmont Hills League Championship, a proclamation that any player will cherish for a lifetime. And additionally, the winner positively secures a spot in San Diego CIF's Open Division Final Four Championship playoff, the next step in claiming the trophy as the section's best team. But Dave, the major question remains, what will happen to the loser of this game? What will be the consolation for the team on the short end of East County's game of the year?
Well, I can say that I'm sure Dad would be proud that I chose, which I usually do not, to go to the game of the week, the game of the year, if you will, to head over to Steel Canyon and watch this one take place. And you know what? How fast this year went from, I can remember we were just talking to Scott Longerbone like it was yesterday out in triple digit heat, and he's got his famous sun hat on, and talking about how great those defensive backs are, and then lo and behold, from the Granite Hills Eagles, Justice McComb, he was talking about the same thing about how great those defensive backs are in the secondary and how careful Helix needs to be with those folks back there. But I do stress he'd said that he did not consider that of the pick. It was just his knowledge of the game, and that's where we'll leave it there. But I think personally, I will stick with what I said last night. But there's other factors in this game. Um, we don't. We I haven't heard whether or not our starting quarterback from most of the season, if he's going to in fact start against the Highlanders on behalf of the Cougars, or if we are going to have the second stringer, which boy he didn't do too bad himself. So I don't think they're going to be losing anything. Whoever's behind center, and then you got Wes Neely always to depend on. Chance Johnson has just been he's just been phenomenal. I mean, I can't imagine how many letters of intent that kid's getting these days. It's from what he won't tell me. I've seen him in the halls almost daily when I'm over there at Seal Canyon, and doesn't want to talk much about that as he is a humble kid. Just a great all around kid. And then they got quite a few good receivers. I know Justice was mentioning one of them. I can't have it on the tip of my tongue, but maybe you can fill that gap in and then give your opinion on your Highlanders.
Yeah, and I can only go on what maybe Chance has said publicly about his prospects at the Division I level. He did get another offer this past week, or maybe a week to 10 days ago, Northern Arizona. The Lumberjacks are interested in Chance. I think that'd be a pretty good fit for Chance playing at the Walkup Skydome, and that's something he could definitely consider. The injuries will play a factor, obviously, in this game. Dave, you mentioned the injury to the Steel Canyon quarterback, Jeremy Mendez-Gall, and Ilya Karizimasi will be the quarterback this week, and he did a fine job last week. I don't think they're going to miss much without Jeremy. Jeremy has the experience, but Ilya looked good. It's kind of a quarterback system over there, so I think that they will be okay. I think that maybe because Ilya hasn't played as much, that could be a bit of a disruption because Helix's defense is so stout. And, of course, the Highlanders are playing without Elolion Noah in this game. It looks like he's going to miss the rest of the season. So I think those are the key outside factors in the game, Dave. But everything else, like you said, I mean, we pretty much know about. It's going to be Steel Canyon, mostly a running game, but they do have some passing options available, and they have, of course, right now, superior special teams to just about anybody in the county. They've turned in 5 special teams touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, and for the Highlanders, they haven't missed a beat without Elolion Noah. Christian Washington, the sophomore, has stepped in to his place, but he's also getting a lot of help from Delshawn Traylor, who kind of has moved his way into the backfield as a running back, and those are 2 running backs that the Highlanders have now with Cameron Brown operating as quarterback. We saw Keontae Scott with that great game, 6 catches last week. It actually ended up being Keontae Scott scoring 3 touchdowns in the first half against Granite Hills, and Christian Washington scored 3 touchdowns in the second half against Granite Hills. So I just have concerns about the loser of this game. That's why I don't mean to lead it off as kind of a bummer. The winner's going to the open division.
I'm going to make a minor adjustment real quick.
Yeah.
Because, hang on just a second.
Okay.
Real quick here. What happened here? Somebody tried to call in.
Okay. I'm just going to keep talking, Dave, and when you come back on, we'll continue the conversation. I'll just keep talking about the Helix Steel Canyon game. I didn't want to start off the show as kind of a bummer and saying what's going to happen to the loser. I think if you're a follower of the local prep scene, the answer might be what you might expect. If Helix loses the game, they'll probably end up 4th. They might end up still in the open division playoff. And I don't know who's going to win this game. I mean, the computers have Steel Canyon about a 2-touchdown underdog, really. A couple of projections I saw certainly have Helix as the favorite in the game. But what's going to happen to Steel Canyon if they don't win this game? Well, that might come down to the situation between Carlsbad and Vista. If Vista could upset Carlsbad and Helix still beats Steel Canyon, that's where Steel Canyon could get into that top four. Carlsbad could end up being the team that kind of bounces out of the top four, and then maybe it's Steel Canyon getting in there along with Saints and Cathedral, because as it stood right now, as of yesterday, in Division One, Cathedral was number one, Helix was number two, Carlsbad was number three, and Steel Canyon was number four. So they were in there right now, but a loss is certainly going to put them a little bit behind. Saints, they're probably going to be expected to win that game. They're a full point behind in the ratings, so it's going to be very, very close. Even if Helix wins, Steel Canyon still has a chance to get that top four seed. And I could go on and speculate about what's going to happen. You back with me, Dave?
Yeah, I think you can hear me loud and clear, I'm sure.
Yeah. Dave, I just wanted to, I posed the question to you, and I guess I answered it myself. But the Cougars, they've won 9 straight games for the first time in the program's 18-year history. And, reaching new heights again, this team. We kind of keep saying every time they get to a new point, well, this is new heights. And it's really something because this team's won a state championship. But here they are on the verge of possibly qualifying for the Open Division playoffs. And all they have to do is win this game at home against top-ranked Helix. I say top-ranked. They're in the top in the media poll. It's the official CIF rankings that have Cathedral Catholic number one. The team's strength of schedule could be the determining factor in Steel Canyon's playoff placement, along with Carlsbad, St. Augustine, even Mission Hills, still a little bit in the mix. So the Cougars defeated the Hillers last week, Dave, on Friday with precision. On Grossmont senior night, Steel Canyon senior Chris Carter threw an 80-yard touchdown pass. He had a 60-yard punt return for a touchdown, and he rushed for a 37-yard score. And Karizamasi finished with 168 yards passing and 2 touchdowns in that first varsity start. So he stepped in. He was a little nervous, Longerbone said, but came through with flying colors. I think the Cougars' offense and that offensive line provided the way for a Grossmont-like 526 yards behind James Bradle, Ulolo Samawata, Darren Roldan, Isaac Hernandez, and Logan Hicks. Dave, the Cougars have the county's second best defense in accordance to points allowed this season, only behind Scripps Ranch. But surely this defense is underrated compared to these perennial top programs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I just think that, for the Open Division, this would be the first time, if that indeed does end up the end result, for Steel Canyon to enter the Open Division, would it not?
Yeah, I think it would.
And I'm still looking at, and we'll get to that. But I think if you can beat this team, is pretty similar to last year as far as the players are concerned, and their rosters are pretty similar. I think that Steel Canyon does still have the edge. They have the crowd, they have the field. The only thing that worries me on the other side, though, is even without Elion Noah, we got our new man that is racking them up on the ground that we talked to 2 weeks ago, and that's Keontae Scott. I mean, he's not slowing down anytime soon, and he's fitting in there just nicely. I mean, I don't see many defenses having an easy task of stopping him, and I think there could be a big dose of him. And you look at some of Cameron Brown's numbers too, and they're pretty astonishing. And you look at the height of the kid too. He's not the tallest kid. Some of these linemen he's got to see over, and he's
throwing these amazing balls like lasers, and he's right on point. And then if he sees he has good vision, he sees someone's not open, he takes off and he can take it in chunks and 20 to 30 yards at a time. So I don't want to say that Steel Canyon has their work cut out for them, but this one I think is really going to be. We forecast a lot of these that they're going to be the game of the week and it's going to be close. But I think this one here, boy, this is the one that everyone's going to come out for. And I'd say, folks, get out there early because parking might turn into quite a situation if you don't get there on
take
time.
Take an Uber, Dave. Take an Uber. If you're not going to get there early, take an Uber.
For sure.
In the back of the back lot. I don't think there's enough room in that back a lot. So
no, and usually the thing with I'm not sure if they would open it. Typically, they keep that back lot where they keep the buses. Typically, they will probably keep that locked up unless absolutely needed. So, folks, get there early. I'm talking the Highlander folks, and especially, I'm sure that hopefully we'll have Liz there. I'd like to see her on our behalf as well, and maybe see Mr. Lindgren out there too. Boy, it'd be nice to have almost the whole crew out there watching such a big game. But as I mentioned before, I'm looking for a field goal, and I'm going to give him the love, and that's going to be Mr. David Martinez. I'm looking for him to kick the 3-pointer to win it with little time left for the Cougars in the upset of the Highlanders.
Well, Dave, in Helix's win over Granite Hill, as you mentioned, Keontae Scott and his transition over here to Helix since leaving the Democracy Prep program in Las Vegas. He had those 3 touchdowns, but it's going to be up to Steel Canyon's defense. Like I said, the best defense really in the county. I respect Scripps Ranch defense, but Steel Canyon, they're an open division contender. So with all due respect to the great year that Scripps Ranch is having down in their division, Steel Canyon and its leading contender for CIF division CIF Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year is what I want to say, Dave.
Right.
Biliamu Ayu Rugby Morse. He's my leading candidate now, 11 sacks so far this season. So I think that's where it's going to come into play maybe for the Cougars. Look, Dave, they're at home, and they beat Helix last year on the road, 22-21. It was the first win for Steel Canyon over Helix in 9 years, and it broke that 19-game league winning streak, remember, that the Highlanders had, as Steel Canyon secured a share of their first league title in 13 years. Chance Johnson played a critical role in that game with that dramatic punt return. Wesley Neely, you mentioned him. He had 2 touchdowns in that game, but Noah had 274 yards rushing last year against Steel Canyon. Obviously, he's out of this game, but Delshawn Traylor was in the game last year and had a rushing touchdown. So, I know you're going with the Cougars there, and I'm just going to go with the Highlanders to get it done because I'm a Highlander. So, and I've seen the Cougars more than any other team this year. I guess, Dave, they're my favorite team out of all of our teams this year to watch because I've seen them so many times, and good luck to them in this game, and good luck to them. I want to see them get in the open division. I kind of almost have to root for them because then we can get them both in the open division. So I don't know where that stands, but that's kind of what I was looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a close one, but for sure, I'm going to go with Cougars with this one. But I figured you might be going with your Highlanders for sure.
Yeah, I'll go with Helix. I'm not sure I believe it. I certainly don't agree with those projections. You go to the Cal Prep site. That's supposed to be like, kind of like the official site without it's not the official rating site like the CIF, but that's where they base their start of their rankings before they take out the margin of victory. And that site has Steel Canyon a 13-point underdog. So, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, this is going to be, like you said, it's probably going to be coming down to a field goal one way or the other. All right, Dave. Well, that's not the only championship game in the East County on Friday night. The Monte Vista Monarchs, the defending Grossmont Valley League champions, are going to travel to West Santee up to 125 and take on the West Hills Wolfpack. And the West Hills Wolfpack can win a share of the league title. Monte Vista's already clinched, Dave, at least a share of the league title. West Hills wins this game and Santana beats El Cajon. We've got that thing. It's so rare, Dave, to have a tri-championship. We might have it for the second year in a row in the Grossmont.
Switched it over. I was gonna mention that last night. How rare is that the Hills did it, and then what did they have a conference over the summer and decided, you know what, we need to do this same try thing with the Valley, and I want to again thank Stephen Christini and the Wolfpack for allowing him to come on and really put in his 2 cents in, and really gave quite a good analysis on how they're going to go about it without giving away the secrets and the schemes. I think he really laid it out there on how Monte Vista likes to play, how the Wolfpack like to play, and I think really we're going to see. I think it's going to be a defensive battle, a low-scoring affair, and I think advantage offensively in reverse from last year when they had McClendon over in the backfield for Monte Vista. This year we have Jake Mayhew, and he's going to be the big boy carrying the rock. And if they want to play the game of who's gonna run the rock the most, I can tell you what, Jake's not quite McClendon size, but he's a pretty big fella, and he can knock some of those defenders down too, and he can also make some pretty good cuts. So, not to mention he's got a good pair of hands, so you could see a couple of screens, maybe even involving Jake Mayhew, Stephen Christini, and the Klingermans will. They'll be all over the field for sure. If there's gonna be an option, if there's gonna be wing T, I'll tell you what, those guys are gonna be out there. And we all know that West Hills is real famous for having the wing T for many years now. And I think what makes this West Hills team so competitive year in and year out, and I said this about Grossmont as well, they got a great system. Kids come, kids go. You know, they have a little bit more than a handful of talent, but it all comes down to the system. And the way, and I've seen it firsthand, Coach Casey Ash, he even watches over the freshmen and the JV teams too. So he pretty much he's out there watching all of them. I saw him about 2 weeks ago watching the freshman game and pretty intensely, and he was putting his 2 cents in and talking to the kids coming off onto the sidelines. And you know what? I think that was real impressive to me, which I mentioned to him too. I think it's a lot of work for one guy, but it's really impressive to see that he really wants that success for all 3 levels. So that's something good to see. But when it comes to this one, I got to also give the accolades to the Monte Vista Monarchs. As I mentioned before, McClendon's gone, Blake Schmidt's gone, but you know what? They still have a Schmidt there and in Logan. And I'll tell you what, not only is he a great pass rusher, he's just a great all-around tackler and in the backfield. He's a great football player. He has great field vision. I think he recognizes the offenses and what the offensive plan is. and I think he's good at relaying it to the boys. And let's not forget our other player of the week from, I'd say it was about 6 weeks ago, and he had 3 sacks, I think, in 2 games in the regular season so far this year. I believe it was non-league competition both times, but let's look out for the big man, Sebastian Valdez, too. I think he plays a huge part in that offensive line. They're going to need to double team the big boy because he gets in there. He's going to be wanting to get a couple of sacks or maybe cause. They've been good at taking care of the ball. West Hills has quarterback wise, but he's going to look to disrupt it and maybe cause a couple of those picks to come into place. So there's a lot to look at in this game, but I think it's going to come down to clock management. And I think Hamamoto is going to do the same thing he did in the last game. And he's probably going to try and keep the Klingermans, as far as offensively, off the field as long as he can. And I still think, though, that the defending champs, as good as I think they are, I think it being senior night and not senior night, I'm sorry, the last game
It is senior
for
night.
Is it?
Yep.
Yeah, it is senior night. And then for for them to play that game, just like Mr. Schmidt said a couple weeks ago, he was saying the same thing. I think that puts a little more adrenaline pumping into the blood and playing against or in front of your fans rather, and playing on that field for possibly the last time that you do as a senior as far as football is concerned. So because of that factor and the factor of the crowd, I'm going to have to go with the West Hillians, I will say, by a point.
Yeah, Dave, if West Hills does win the game and secures that league championship, that shared league title with those 2 other teams, I think they are going to get a home game. It will not be the last time that West Hills plays, those seniors play on that home field, and it'll be the first West Hills home playoff game in quite a while. No, I think that's what Stephen Christini was most excited about when we spoke to him yesterday. Of course, getting this win stands out first and foremost. When you say that they were going to do like the last game, Dave, did you mean like what Monte Vista did last year to West Hills, or what Monte Vista did against El Cajon Valley last week?
No, what West Hill what they did to El Cajon Valley last week.
Okay.
And I also think that no, I'm sorry. I have to correct myself again. No, the way that all the energy, because it was homecoming, I believe it was, or senior night, was against Santana, and because they were all amped up about that game, so it was the Santana game, and I think that's what happened.
Oh.
Is they were so fired up, and that's exactly what Logan had said to us. Those were his quotes. That might be the last time they would be on that field. So they were really fired up about that one. And that's what gave them the 37-10 win over Santana. But I must say, it's going to be a game of schemes. Also, I think there's always something up Coach Ash's sleeve. And I also think Moto always has a special play up his sleeve. And it could come down to that as well. And who knows? It could come down to a touchdown at the end of the game. But like I said, I'm going to have to go with West Hills for the reasons I mentioned before. However, I think that Monte Vista has played since league started, they've really turned their season down. And as we talked at the beginning of the season, they set themselves up against teams like Lincoln and that on purpose so they could figure out how to get the bugs out and really make themselves a more formidable team and to be a lot stronger team with less mistakes. So again, I am going to go with West Hills by a point. But it's going to be a quick game because I think there's going to be a lot of ground running and not so much passing.
I think West Hills might have to take to the air in the game, but we'll see. Last season, this matchup determined the outright Valley champion. Both teams came in 3-0 into that game. At Monta Vista, the Monarchs dominated after a scoreless first quarter. They won 35-0. Jamon McClendon scored 5 touchdowns for their first league title in 14 years, and now Monta Vista is trying for their second consecutive. Well, they actually have it. They have their second consecutive league title. They're going for their second consecutive outright league title in the Valley League. Last week, 5 different Monarchs scored touchdowns in the 35-0 win over El Cajon Valley. I want to mention senior Federico Villanueva Jr. He returned a kickoff, 85 yards for a touchdown in the victory. Last week against Mount Miguel, Dave, West Hills, we mentioned senior brothers Cole and Kip Klingerman. They combined for 3 touchdown receptions in a 28-27 win over host Mount Miguel. And senior slotback Stephen Christini, our guest from this week's show, the interview show, had 67 yards rushing. He had 4 catches, including the decisive touchdown catch, and he also had an interception. You're looking for the West Hills defense to do a little bit more this week and try to stop that Monta Vista running game. So we mentioned some players in our interview show, but I want to mention senior Nick Rodriguez, who had a good game last week against Mount Miguel. So Monta Vista leads the all-time series 11-6. You picked West Hills, so I will pick Monta Vista to win this one by a point. Dave, we have a third championship game to talk about on our show tonight. Christian is going to be on the road at La Jolla. Kind of the same situation. La Jolla's already wrapped up at least a share of the Eastern League Championship, but the Patriots will play for a share on Friday night when they travel to meet the Vikings. Christian High traveled over 550 miles last week to play in a stiff tune-up, falling to Fernley High of Nevada 45-30, despite 3 touchdowns by senior running back Nate Stein. Fernley led 31-10 at halftime. Dave, junior quarterback Gabe Krug had 387 yards of total offense, including 228 yards through the air and a pair of touchdown passes. Todd Beezer had 11 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown. Dave, last year, Christian beat La Jolla 49-0, but Christian's kind of getting things together with that offense after some injuries. I think they had great stats last week against a good team, which does bode well, but the Vikings are playing for a top 4 seed in Division III. They have their first league championship, I believe I want to say it's been 24 years.
Well, I think that really when it comes to the passing game, and I'm sure they recognize that on film too, but it's hard to cover because I will say that Dave Beezer's son, Todd Beezer, is a big kid. He's a big, healthy kid, heck of an athlete, and you know what? He's always where he's supposed to be. He's running his routes correctly, and I'll tell you what, he's if you watch a lot of the film or a lot of the highlights, it's always Gabe's always going to if he wants to go long, if he wants to go short for Indies at first down, he depends on Beezer quite a bit. And if he's not dependent on Beezer, he's usually taking the ball and he's running the ball himself. So those two have been they have been really good buddies this year. I'll tell you that much. La Jolla, like you said, they pretty much they got it already locked up. Christian really needs this game. I think they're similar teams. I think that Christian has the personnel though to get it done. I mean, like you said, the Steins have they've always been huge for the Patriots, but I think it's going to come down to if Crew can throw the ball. And if that offensive line can keep that defense off of him, which I think they can, and maybe a couple of bubble screens. Who knows? I mean, there's so many different looks and so many different formations that we've seen in the last couple of months. That offensive coordinator Dave Beazer, just to confuse the defense as much as possible. But we don't talk about the defense enough, and the Christian defense, they've kept them in a lot of these games. And our boy, he was the king, the homecoming king, Christian Sellecup.
Yeah. What's his status? Do you know?
I do not. I haven't heard anything from Beazer. I haven't heard that he's in a play or if he is not going to. But I think that is a huge deal facing La Jolla. I tell you what, you watch highlights, another guy that is all over the place, and and if he is supposed to be on a certain assignment, he's always where he's supposed to be. Jack St. Fleur, I'm not too sure on him as well. And then of course Stroman would be. I don't think we're going to be seeing him either. But I think that overall, I think that the Patriots have the tools. They still have enough. I think because they do have Gabe and they do have Beazer. I don't want to say that take anything away from any of the other players, but they're healthy. Stein plays healthy. Those three right there can win you football games. Even if it's if it's a field goal, I still see Christian winning this one at least by a field goal, maybe even by a touchdown. And then a couple other we want to mention too. Defensive end Alex Markowitz has been always consistent as well. But I think it's the injury bug that's kind of plagued the Patriots down the line, and that's kind of we're hoping that the bye healed up a few of those folks so they can come in and make a good run in the playoffs. But I honestly think La Jolla is definitely defeatable.
Well, Dave, you mentioned Christian wants to win this game. I imagine they do. They'd win their share of the league title, as mentioned, but they also would gain probably a top 4 seed in the Division II playoffs. So I think that's an important thing to note as well. They're going to have to match up against two good players. La Jolla is a pretty balanced team as far as run and pass are concerned, but they are led offensively by junior Max Smith and sophomore Makai Smith. They've combined for 13 touchdowns this year, and I am not picking against Christian. They are underdogs in this game, but I've got the Patriots.
Yeah, I was trying to get up the Max Prep rankings actually right now real quick, and let's see, in Division III. They're not California State. They're in the San Diego section rankings. Not that that's huge. They're ranked 26, and that is Santana's ranked a little higher. But La Jolla also, surprisingly, after I saw Morse play, them being 26 and Morse being 29, and Christian is ranked at 30. So that's kind of interesting, I think, as well. And then as the Division III rankings, it looks like Scripps Ranch, of course, is in the number 1 spot. And then is number 3. Central, one of the teams that Christian was able to edge. I think it was a 2-point win. They're at number. And then... I actually, after that, I don't see Christian listed after that. So I see La Jolla at number 3. and then Central at number 4. So, and surprisingly enough, we know how they played this year. They're going to have anything to do with us. But here's another one for you for the Division 3. Valhalla is at number 9.
Yeah. Valhalla's in. Valhalla's in. We'll talk about them. We'll talk about them right now. How about that? Valhalla's going to travel to take on Granite Hills. The Norsemen got 154 yards and 3 touchdowns from Keegan Baker in the home win over the Vaqueros last Friday. Dave, you were there, and Valhalla got that win over El Cap, and they're going to play Granite Hills this week.
I tell you what, the Norsemen have been good. Excuse me. Have been good all year. They have surprised, I think, all of us. Expected them to be this competitive. How Mr. Meredith, we got to give credit where credit is due, but at the same time, I think that this is going to be one of those games, and it was the last game of the season last year as well against those Granite Hills Eagles. As a matter of fact, and then we mentioned it on our show last night. Justice, I believe he played. I want to say he played a quarter and a half, maybe more. They didn't want to use O-string too long after they'd already pretty much. I forgot what the score was, but
43
winning by
43-0.
So Justice went in there and shoot, he was throwing touchdown passes. He looked real good, but that's neither here nor there because that was a completely different Valhalla team that we have seen this year. This is Coach Cass, the second year, and 4-5. It's a lot better than they were last year, and 1-3 in the league. Of course, getting that one that they got from El Cap. I will tell you though, in that game, I want to just try to steer myself away from it, just and keep it under advisement from many others that have told me,
Dave, I'll say it for you. I'll say it for you, Dave. You don't think that San Diego County football officials are doing a good job? You point blank. I think you would just blanket statement that these men and women that are out there on Friday nights, not their full-time jobs. They all probably work full-time. You do not think that they go out onto the field and do a good enough job. Is that right?
I would say not even only at this level. I would say at the community college level too. I've never seen it in the couple of years that I've been doing this. I think this is by far the year that I don't know why. I don't know if it's a different crop that came through or if they're just pushing them through quickly. But there have been some plays that have been, I'm sorry, and forgive me for saying horrendous, costing teams games.
Okay. Well, here it is. I'll lay it out for you. I'll be perfectly clear and perfectly honest to our 5 viewers right now and whatever we get. I mean, National, I'm so happy with you and us and Justice and Steve. We over 500 views on all of our videos across the different platforms. So people are going to see this. And I just want to make it clear that your feelings be known. But I'm going to say what I think about the officiating. And I think we're driving officials because of statements like yours. I think by the way the fans treat officials. Most officials are coming in for 1 or 2 years. And there's a select few that get into it. They get excited. They like it. They stay with it. There are some that are thick-skinned and can deal with it. But it's happening at every level, especially in basketball where the fans are so close. people don't want to do this job, Dave. It's a thankless job. People are ripping these guys. They're out there doing the best they can, and they're just not getting a fair shake from anybody. I think the officials out there are doing a tremendous job, a great job. I want them all to keep up with it. I want them to keep doing it if they can put up with these fans, these parents ripping them week after week when they're just really doing the best they can. Maybe there's some that are officiating in their own neighborhoods and they're giving the home team an unfair shake. And yeah, maybe that should be reported. I mean, all these things are on film. They can be taught better. They do it part-time, and they're not going to go to they go to some classes. They definitely learn about the game, learn how to call holding, learn, how to, but here's the thing that I have a problem with when we're calling ticky-tack fouls on like lining up at the line of scrimmage when at the high school level, officials that do know the rules should kind of be coaching up players. If a guy is off, leaning off sides, you go up to him and say, hey, when I give you the instruction, when I say move back and you can hear the official, you stand right there on the sideline. The official will tell the receiver, move back.
Or they'll ask them, but you hear, because of that, you hear most of the players now going, hey, am I on? Am I on? Am I on?
Sure.
And I can appreciate. I'm not saying that every single official out there in the San Diego section is doing a horrible job. At the community college level, I've met some tremendous. They've been great, fantastic.
Same. I mean, there is a little bit of experience difference. Those getting those Saturday assignments usually are a little more experienced, been around a while. There are less assignments on Saturday, but many of them worked games on Friday night.
My final take on this, it comes down to finances, and I wish we had it, and I know the taxpayers would probably not like this type of thing, but I, being one, would think it would be worth it to have a replay, and something to look back at, because I can honestly say I saw a play, and I think it could very well have cost this team the game and the score.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if he was breathing on his jersey, not touching his jersey, breathing on his jersey. So, like I said, little ticky-tack stuff like that. And you know what, Ramon, just to confirm my own, I look at the camera and I look at it myself. I play in slow motion myself. I do my own instant replay, and I look at it and I go, there's no way that I understand. They're doing their job, and I'm going to stop because I could go on for forever on this. I just think that if not a replay, let's, I don't know, maybe we need to have a refresher course.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something needs to be done.
Yeah, you'd have to televise game. We can't. We've tried, Dave. We've tried to do our own streams. I mean, we can't get it done. You can't get these games on TV or anything. It's hard. And so, just remember, folks, when you see Dave out there, the officials, he's the guy who thinks that maybe you're not all of you, but he's got a problem. Okay, I don't. I think you're doing a great job. Officials, they're paid well, Dave. They're paid pretty well for a part-time job for a few hours a night. It's not, they're not out there being an engineer or anything. Playing a football game, but it's not
And here's my thing, refs. Also, I will never actually, because of the team, I don't want to cost the team any penalties. I don't want to cost us any personal penalties, and I also do not want to call anybody out personally. And I will respect you while I'm on the sidelines, but do know if it is a bad call. Hey, if I put it in that story, I put it in there. I rarely put something in there. I think it's been twice the whole time I've been writing since 2011, and it's because it was bad. That's all I got to say. I'll end it on that. But for the rest of you guys have done a tremendous job, just like Ramon has said. It's just
I knew
if we could do a refresher course or something like that, that would be great. Just to help improve it. I think sometimes let the kids play the football game. We're heading to championship time. Let them play. If they're not grabbing their face masks, they're not doing horse collar tackles. Let them play the game. Just saying, and that's my opinion.
I think this is the toughest level. It's funny because I think this is kind of the toughest level to officiate, and this is what most of anybody who gets into football officiating, this is where they go. Junior varsity games, Pop Warner games, those are the toughest to officiate, and all the parents know that their little boy or girl is going to be the next NFL superstar. So, and that's not going to be the case. So we know what the problem is, what the problem here is, but I'm not going to, get into it. And what game were we talking about? I don't even know now.
We were talking about Valhalla, so I was talking about the Valhalla and LCAC game. It's too bad I didn't have it ready, but it was I believe it was an offensive pass interference, and it was the ugliest call I'd ever seen. And so did most of the staff, but there's too many details to go through to really paint the picture. I tried to do the best I could in the story.
Here's another thing. Anybody wants to see this play? I mean, the game was televised by Orange Nation TV last week in its entirety. The whole game's there. You can go back and watch it and determine it for yourself. Anybody can take a look at that. So I might go back and take a look at it now. But
I would.
Valhalla also got a 37-yard touchdown run from Josh Meredith, who's really playing well right now. Valhalla surely headed to the playoffs regardless of this outcome. In fact, Dave, it's kind of interesting. They're kind of battling West Hills for that first-round home game. West Hills has it right now, and Valhalla's right behind them, and those two teams could kind of reverse roles. Valhalla, with an upset, could have a home game in the playoffs, which would be terrific for Valhalla. You mentioned Justice McComb, the comeback against the Highlanders. Dave, a great comeback. They got to within 8 points of the Highlanders. McComb had 307 yards passing. He had touchdown passes to James Johnson, junior Matt Keeley, and freshman Jalen Hall, who you're really impressed with.
Absolutely.
Last year's meeting 43-0, but Granite Hills at the time, they were playing for a league title, and we know that Valhalla was a winless team. And you mentioned Valhalla's dramatic improvement. They're definitely, I think, live in this game. I say it just because Granite Hills knows that they're in the playoffs. When we talked to Justice, they were certainly fired up for this game because they would like to get a league victory. Deep down, they know they have another game left. They're going to be playing on the road. There's nothing they can do about it. I don't even think this win, should they get it, is going to change their fortunes. So I think Valhalla's got that on their side this week. They could be the team that's a little bit more hungry, if that's possible, for a team that's winless in league in Granite Hills.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at is right now.
I mean, they're expected to win a big game. Make no mistake about it. I mean, Granite Hills, by all those prognostications, are 3 touchdown or more favorite.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the 0-4 mark, and you look at all the teams that they lost to in the Hills, and I'll reiterate it. If you watch the highlights, I had been at the one against the Cougars live. I was at the game, not Helix. There was another one I was at that. Let me think here. And the same thing, and I really Grossmont and the Steel game, they were a fumble I think the other one was might have been a fumble also uh, on their own behalf, and almost similar times left on the clock, like between 140 to a minute left, and in being 2-2 in the league, and they very well could have been, and they were winnable games. I almost want to say if there was ever any luck, but they really have had some bad luck since league play started. Because I'll tell you what, non-league play, they were doing fantastic. Uh, I mean, you and I and everybody else was thinking, "Wow, Granite's going to go in this, and they might be right up back at the top again, in the top of the hills, along with Helix and Steel." I I don't see any major injury issues. Um, I just think that my thoughts are they're just missing assignments. Um, and maybe some of their which I've seen occasionally, they're not running the route correctly. I mean, there's some youngsters on this Eagles team that they've had to play, but then you get like Jalen, you get Jaden, you get picked receivers like that are freshmen that are running all of their routes correctly and catching all the balls, and you're looking at this junior quarterback going, well, why is he throwing it to a freshman? Well, he's running his routes correctly. He knows what he's supposed to do. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to go to the guy that's going to be and make you and the team most successful. And watch out for that kid too, Jay. I think he is just going to be something for the next 3 years. I think he'll be one of his go-to targets next year as well. But again, let's talk about James Johnson also has been incredible all season long, as you had mentioned before, and Zetterberg as well. I mean, they even got a great backfield with Kevon Martin back, Junie Harris. I mean, they have got so many weapons, and then the defense too. It just doesn't stop. They have a complete team. It's comes down to it is high school football, and it's one play. And those losses typically was one play, one mistake cost them the game. I wouldn't be surprised if there might even be some extra practice time for the Granite Hills Eagles this week, just to be triple sure that we are going to take it to the house and we are going to beat Valhalla convincingly and get our one win in the Hills League.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick Granite Hills also. Of course, I'm going to pick Granite Hills to win this game. And I don't mean to slight the Eagles and say they won't be interested or they might be disinterested in this game and it might end up costing them. Maybe they're, sleepwalking through it. I think the fact that they have that 4-game losing streak, which is frankly un-Granite Hills-like. They haven't had this type of losing streak in many, many years. So I think that's going to motivate them more so than just be talking about them being 0-4 and already going to the playoffs. It doesn't matter what happens in this game. I think that 4-game losing streak is bothering these guys. I think that's what it is.
Well, and they got the talent. So let me ask you this: could this be the game that, I'm not saying it's a repeat of 43-0, but could this be the game that they win by 4 touchdowns and it kickstarts them into the CIF? I'm not saying they're going to be exactly a Steel Canyon type story, but could this possibly be a kickstart into CIF and winning 1 or 2 of those, or maybe end up in the semis? What do you think? Is it it's still a good possibility? They're healthy.
Well,
they got plenty of talent.
I'll make it clear to you, and then you can decide, because I think this is, whatever happens, their fate's sealed as far as the playoffs concerned. And now the thing is, it's who are they going to play? In the first round of the playoffs, and it's most likely going to be a team such as Oceanside or La Costa Canyon, and it's going to require a trip, up north. Now they could move up a little bit. Could even be a team like Eastlake, but most likely it looks like Oceanside, La Costa Canyon, right in there somewhere. So, going to have to go on the road and win a playoff game against another Division I team. Can they do it? Of course they can. I think there's a very good balance. Once you get off of the first maybe 2-3 teams that end up in Division I, I'm talking about the likes of, if it's Steel Canyon, if it's Mission Hills, if Saints falls into Division I, teams like Madison and Lincoln. Those are all tough teams. And remember, Granite Hills had Lincoln on their home field last year in that semifinal and got beat.
I'm just saying anything is possible. And these Eagles, if they get it together and they play, I don't want to say mistake-free ball, but if they play like they did at the beginning of the season, there's a very good possibility that they could edge an Oceanside. And I'll tell you what, or a La Costa Canyon. And if they do so, you better watch out whoever's playing them next, because that could speak volumes about now what we're talking about as far as the Eagles are concerned. So as far as I see it, they're going to beat Valhalla multiple touchdowns, and I think that Granite does have a chance at least to get through the first round for sure. I think they are good enough, and they have the personnel, they have the coaching staff. If they play Granite Hills football, they definitely will get through at least one, maybe even a second round.
And you mentioned Macomb, Dave, and his targets. I mentioned Johnson, Keeley, and you mentioned Jalen Hall. But last year was Jacob Setterberg, who caught 2 touchdowns against Valhalla. So you mentioned the weapons. Granite Hills definitely has them. All right, Dave, how about this one? Number 15, Grossmont. They're going to make their longest road trip of the regular season, believe it or not. 8.5 miles to Lakeside to play the Vaqueros in the league finale. Dave, El Capitan would like to get this victory and finish up with 2 wins. And I think, they dropped a 49-21 decision in the season ender to Grossmont last October. Jamie Odom, who recently moved into 9th place on the all-time section list for total offense, threw 4 touchdown passes last year in the game. Caitlin Lavallee and then sophomore Taylor Grasmick combined for 71 yards in total offense in that game. The Vaqueros have dropped 4 straight to Grossmont, Dave.
This is true, and I hope, Coach Carlo, if you are watching this, this is nothing against your team and saying that your team is lacking at all. I think you have all the weapons that Robert Tucker has had a phenomenal season. As we all know, Odom has been breaking all kinds of records, with the 5,000 yards, the way he's been able to run the ball too, the time that, because of such a great offensive line, he's had time to find his receivers. Schicker has been one of his number 1 receivers. He's really became comfortable with since Thomas Magna moved on over to community college. But and let's not forget about Christopher Alba, leading tackler and one of the best linebackers. I agree with Chase Carlo, probably one of the best linebackers in the county. If you've ever seen him live, you'll see why. He definitely is a premier tackler. No one's bouncing off the kid. He's gonna you may bounce into him, but he's gonna wrap you up and you're gonna be dead in your tracks. because you're not going to be going any further. I think again, this is one of those that the Grossmont Foothillers system is been good for so many years, and I think Coach Carlo has a very good offensive system in particular put into play, and it works well. With the exception of the injuries last year, has worked well for many years. I think he's got a great coaching staff as well. Playing 7 games at home, that definitely helped the win-loss margin, but not too bad, not too shabby either. Going 2-2 in league. However, I still think that this El Cap game is just as important to El Cap as it is to Grossmont. We talked about early on in the season that El Cap needed to beat Valhalla and upset one of the big guys, maybe being Grossmont or Granite or Steel. And you know what? They beat Granite. They didn't beat Valhalla. But guess what? This week they have another shot at a possibility of defeating the Grossmont Foothillers. And do they have a great chance? I think they have any chance at all. It's this year for sure. I think they definitely have the weapons on offense, and the defense has improved dramatically since I last saw them. Besides Valhalla last week, I saw them against early in the season against Patrick Henry, and that was just out of control. They have since changed defensive coordinators, but Wick is, he said it best. Berner said it best that Wick has been working his butt off all season long. Whether he's running the ball, and you know what, if you go up and you see him on the field and you're talking to him, let me tell you, that's a big kid. He's got some thick legs. He's got some he's a definitely an athletic individual, and he can do as much damage if you give him a hole, or he's got good blocking. He can do just as much damage with his legs, similar to Odom actually. And we also know that he can launch the ball, and he's pretty accurate passer as well. And we found out last week Sean Dixon was one of them that caught a beauty, and he did the rest of the work after that. And then we, the Yoakleys have usually typically been his passers in the past, but I think the reason El Cap has the best chance this year is because due to the fact that Wick is healthier this year than he has been since he's actually been on the team, and I believe he started on varsity as a sophomore. And his sophomore, his junior year, I think maybe he played 4 games total, maybe 5. So, complete games. So really, he didn't have that much time on the field. And for him to be playing and to know the offense like he does, I do see Coach Berner get after him quite often. But I think he's on him so much because he has so much belief that Wick does have that field knowledge and that athleticism, and he knows that he can get it done. And let's not forget Donnie Green. Boy, I'll tell you what, that's one thick running back, and he's good. He's got the high step. If you ever watch him run through those holes, he's got those legs. He's got those knees almost up to past his chest, and he's also got a nice stiff arm, and he can also find those seams as well. So, and the defense has been able to hold their own as a whole. I haven't seen any real particulars, but they did have some turnovers, caused some turnovers last week, and I think that is the biggest key is to shorten up the field for El Capitan, and that will be the way that they can defeat the Foothillers. If they don't get the short field and they don't keep Grossmont off the field, it's going to be a long night. Um, I'd love to pick the upset, and I'd love for Burner to be able to make the playoffs, but I'm going to go with Carlo and his crew, and I'm going to say by 2 touchdowns.
Well, Dave, you mentioned Donnie Green. He did score a touchdown in that game against Valhalla, and you mentioned the other touchdowns, Lavallee and Sean Dixon catching that pass in the front of the end zone. But, throw it out the window. Throw out everything that I said. I mean, you're right. I mean, Valhalla, in that game against Valhalla last week, El Capitan, we kind of said, hey, that's the game they need to win if they want to make the playoffs. Well, they didn't win. But you know what? Yeah, beat Grossmont this week. Guess what, El Capitan? You might still be in the playoffs. It'll be close. But I think that the strength of Grossmont will help Valhalla. I'm sorry, El Cap get right on the edge, Dave. If they don't make it, they're going to come very, very close. It's going to come down to the final decimal points, I think, according to the CIF rating. So they just got to get out there and win and pull off this upset. I mean, they're considerable underdogs in the game. Those rating sites have Grossmont by Dave 4 touchdowns in that game. So again, you love the ratings, and so that's why I got to go with Grossmont. But I'm gonna, I don't know. I just want El Cap to win a big game and get a big win. Grossmont's in that same. We're in that same shoe that Granite Hills is, kind of, Dave. Grossmont, they're already in the playoffs. The thing is, for Grossmont, they are trying to move up to a top 4 seed, and they're right on the edge of that. So they do have something to play for. Even if they win, they might not get that top 4 seed in Division I, but they might. And what they have to do is go out there and win, and then let it play out and see what happens.
And I understand that, and I know the goal. And again, I think for me, what it's been, and this was in the Valhalla game too. This was nothing personal against Valhalla, nothing personal against Tom Carlo. I love his program. I think he's got a huge group of talented players. I just, when you see a team like El Cajon or a team like El Cap that's been fighting for so many years in a tough Hills League like they have ever since. They did their thing in 2014. I get it. But you know what? Ever since then, it's been real tough for Burner and crew. And to see the upset, I'm sorry, Coach Carlo. I know you'll still be in the playoffs and do well, and I know you want the seeding. But I know that you'll still do great in the playoffs. You got just phenomenal players with Odom and Alba and Schicker, but I'd like to see the black and gold maybe for another week of football, just a little CIF football, and without El Cap, it just seems it's been a little dry without them for a while.
Well, yeah, new league next year. We're gonna have some exciting games with El Cap, Valhalla, West Hills, Monte Vista.
If we could start tomorrow with that lineup, boy, I'd be the happiest camper if we could start all over. But it is what it is, and I think that was a good decision. Also, whoever made that final decision on not sending Monte Vista to the Hills League, I think that would have been. I don't think that would have been something that would have been of a benefit to the school or to the program whatsoever. I think the way that Wilbur and company and the CIF set it up, I think this was probably the best call, and I'm impressed. I remember having this conversation last year also before you and Dolan started talking about it, and I'm just glad that people listen. and that are in the high positions. If you had anything to do with it, thank you, Jerry Schneip. And I know Brian Wilbur, you had something to do with it. I think it was a great call. I think it's going to make for a better Grossmont conference. So I thank you personally as well. And you know what, Brian? It's good. It's good to see you.
Go, Dave. Must have kicked over his phone. I'll take over, I guess, and just okay. Go ahead, Dave. We're back.
So, Brian's just been. How long is?
Oh, darn it, Dave. All right. Well, just want to mention I had a great time out there with Grossmont last week before the game, before they lost to Steel Canyon, hanging out with the seniors on senior night. I want to thank Andrew Sanders, Cameron Sanderlin out there, and Brody Schicker. Did some interviews before the game and enjoyed my time out there. Dave's trying to come back with us. I want to also mention senior kicker Axel Gonzalez with his East County leading, I believe, the 7th three-pointer of the season. So a lot of great kickers in the East County and kind of kicking back and forth who might be the all-East County kicker. It's tough, man. All these kickers we had pretty good seasons, but I'm not sure any of them come close to Gonzalez. Now, he has tried more field goals than I believe all the kickers in the East County as well, but to kick 7 field goals this season, going to be hard to consider any other kicker as
I'm going to just
top kicker.
Check the volume on this real quick.
Sure, Dave.
I think something real quick technical.
Okay. Well, I could just keep talking. We've been on here an hour and 15. I don't think anybody's even watching anymore, but I was going to move on maybe to the next game. I think we both picked Grossmont. Kind of rooting for El Cap to give them a good game. Check your volume.
There we go.
Okay. Okay,
So,
Dave, I mean, we're killing these games this week as far as too much time, I guess, on them. But I just have so much to say. So, but Dave, El Cajon Valley going to take on Santana. The Sultans are coming off their bye week. They're likely, headed to the playoffs in Division 4 as the top seed. I'm not sure there's any reason why they won't be. 2 weeks ago, the Sultans' season-long winning streak was stopped at the hands of Monte Vista. A week earlier, they'd finally swept the Mayor's Cup from West Hills. So been kind of a rocky road for the Sultans over those last 2 games with a win over the Braves combined with a Wolfpack. I don't know if it's an upset, but if the Wolfpack can beat the Monarchs, Santana could still grab a share of that long-awaited league championship, Dave. So in other words, the Sultans' ultimate goals of league and section titles can still be accomplished.
Well, I definitely think that it's time for Santana to be up at that top, and even if they share it, but at the same time, you have to be impressed, even though it's 3. But you know what? To add a 4th, I'm kind of caught in between. I almost want the Braves to have a 4th win in there and raise their level a little bit so they can, I know they won't be playing on their home field, but it's going to be nice to see the Braves also playing some postseason play. It's been quite a few years, and Nick Osborne and crew, what they've been able to do with the whole culture, not just football, but the whole culture over at El Cajon Valley High School. I didn't get a chance to talk to him last week as Thomas Ringer was on the beat last week, but I just that whole program, and I think with him at the helms, and if they keep that coaching staff with Clifton Thomas and among others, I think that El Cajon is going to really grow into, and the way they're changing the valley, and I just think that El Cajon really is going to have a better chance each year, and they're going to get better each year and compete a little more than they have been able to in the past. I on this one, I'm not going to be I'm going to pick against El Cajon, but I would like to see an upset of maybe a 3-point. No offense, guys, over there in Santana. But I'd like to see the Braves also at the same time get another win and then have four wins on the season and have a league win. That would really look good for all the hard work that they did all season long. And you know, good luck to those guys too. Kevon, you had a fantastic year. Joe Malone, you've really held your own through playing through some pretty tough injuries, throwing the ball, playing on, also making tackles in the backfield. Demarius Hyde has been one heck of a runner for for being such a shorthanded team. They really got some big superstars this year out at El Cajon Valley High School, and then let's not forget Clarence Johnson too, and all players of the week. Boy, they really outdid themselves this year as far as being players of the week, and I was fortunate to see them play 3 times and then avenging their loss the year before, from 75, I think it was, to nothing, and then being able to beat them at their house and take a Coronado on and really just boy, I think that made their whole season still to this day, and it's always good to see something like that. And I think that's why I believe that it's anything's possible with this El Cajon team. It just depends on how they come out on Friday night. But just to let you know, Coach Osborne, I believe in you. But boy, this Santana team is nothing to mess with. They got weapons on both sides of the ball, and their special teams is no slouch either. So Tim Estes and the boys are going to go in there. But as I know Coach Estes, he's not going to go in there overconfident. He's going to go in there and he's going to play all 4 quarters because he never takes any team for granted. And that's been his quote just about every time I've talked to him.
Well, Dave, the Sultans were so fired up for that game, I'm sure, at Monte Vista, and came out of it with such disappointment. Nathan Temple, he had a rushing touchdown on the Sultans' first series of the game against the Monarchs, and that made Logan Schmidt take a step back and saying, you know what, I guess these guys are all that. But after that, it was all Monarchs. So the Sultans had to kind of go back to the drawing board because they really didn't make any more noise the rest of the game except for a field goal by our buddy Nathan Hughes. And Dave, you saw those guys. I made the thumbnail of this week's show of those guys hanging out at Southwestern this week. You were hanging out with Nathan and also Sean Dixon of El Capitan. The 2 Nathans were there. So you had a chance to talk to them. How upset were the Sultans?
You know, they were very humble. They were, I would say, Mr. Dixon was a little just disappointed, I would say, from the Valhalla. But as far as the Sultans, they were very impressed with the words and what Logan had to say in terms of how he speaks about the other team, even though they won, how highly he spoke of Mr. Hughes and Mr. Temple and about the whole team. And they spoke of him very highly too. They said, you know, he's a lot bigger when you see him on the field, and boy, the intensity that he plays with, they said it made him look a lot bigger. And they said this guy really knows how to play football, and I'm surprised if he's not. This was Temple saying, I'm surprised he's not getting many letters of intent. And I said, well, he was just talking about how his size he was worried about and going more the academic way. And Mr. Temple himself said, I don't know why he's saying that, because I think that he has many years of and many opportunities where he could play at a 4-year college. So to hear that come from Nathan Temple and a quarterback of his caliber, I think that's really saying a lot. And just the way that they were talking about him and the way he talked about them, it's real nice kind of thing to see happen in the East County. That even though they lost by quite a few to Monte Vista, to still have such kind words to exchange about each other, and and then to see them there. To What a pleasure it was to hear them calling me out and at halftime and shaking their hand and just hanging out with them for a little bit. I was looking for my son Sebastian that was already taking fantastic pictures, and that was the one I was like, I'd like to get in with these guys, but that's all right. I didn't want to ruin the picture either, fellas. But no, it was really a pleasure to see them there, and I know that Carberry really he really likes putting those things on. While he should be, because that's a real good way to you know pick and choose a lot of your talent, and then hopefully one of these years soon with the new AD, maybe Grossmont will shortly have the same thing going on over on their in their neck of the woods as Mesa has done over at their location as well. So I think Grossmont's right behind him, and I think it could be in the works right now. We just don't know, but pleasurable kids. That's what makes this, and I know you agree with it. That's what makes this job most rewarding, is how happy these kids are and the way they talk about their opponents. I think that's huge, and that says a lot about the sportsmanship in this county.
Yeah, no, that's why we do it, Dave. That's your dad, back at the old Daily Californian. I mean, your dad used to send myself or some of the other reporters to the professional games covering the Gulls or the Padres or the Chart, whatever. I always wanted to go to the high school games on Friday night. Somebody, who's going to go to the major league game? No, we want to cover the high school games. It's just a more fun experience. So, Dave, just want to mention Demarius Hyde. You mentioned him. He had 128 yards rushing against Monte Vista, and I don't think Santana rushed for 100 yards against Monte Vista. So good job by Demarius. El Cajon Valley, despite its losing streak, Dave, in league right now, they are a sure qualifier for the postseason. In fact, unless Claremont can upset Crawford, I believe the El Cajon Valley Braves will host a home game in the playoffs, possibly against Claremont or maybe even a team like Mountain Empire. We'll talk about them in just a moment. But we both got the Sultans, and we're going to be excited when the Braves go to the playoffs. Okay, Dave. I'm going to this game this week. There are huge games in all of our East County, but I'm going out to watch Jaheim Allen Pompey. Dave, all eyes, including those of the Nighthawk defensive backs of Del Norte, are going to be on senior wide receiver Jaheim Allen Pompey and his climb up the national leaderboard, as well as the section record books. Dave, all Allen Pompey did last Friday night against the West Hills Wolfpack was catch 16 passes, 160 yards and a touchdown. Immediately after the 28-27 loss, I met with Jaheim and his family down at the KUSI studios and just enjoyed their company and let them know that what Jaheim is doing on his record-setting march. I mean, it's not over yet, Dave. With his 1,653 yards on the season, he still leads the country in receiving yards, reportedly, by nearly 300 yards. The all-time Grossmont Conference leader in receiving yards, Jaheim Allen Pompey, could still set local circuit records in receptions and receiving touchdowns, as Mount Miguel is currently making a run, towards the Division IV playoffs. He has 85 receptions and 18 touchdowns, Dave. But get this, this week, Jaheim Allen Pompey, with just one of his normal games. Now they're playing Del Norte, despite their 2-7 record. They play in a pretty good league. They play in the Palomar League. They beat La Jolla. Okay, Del Norte beat La Jolla, so they are much better than this 2-7 record indicate. So I think it's going to be tough for Jaheim. But on Friday night, Jaheim could set the CIF record for most reception yards in a single season. Now, there has been talk about who holds that record, and the current record holder is a pretty good football player. He's playing currently at Ohio State University. His name is Chris Olave, and Jaheim is set to beat him on Friday night. I think the Matadors are going to make a point of it. I think the Matadors might use their other weapons because they really have to win this game. They're headed for the playoffs, certainly, but they could get a first-round home game with a victory. So they want to get this win, but they also want to get Jaheim that record. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So sometimes you deviate from the game plan a little bit for the sake of history. I don't think Coach Troy Starr would ever admit to that, but I think deep down they know that this is a very special player, a special occasion, a special moment for Mount Miguel High School, and that's mostly what I'm looking forward to, especially since I'm going to miss those championship games this Friday.
Well, it can't be that bad. At least you get to see the best receiver in the nation. Yeah. So that's the bonus.
He's my favorite player. What can I say? Jaheim knows it. I said it to his face last week. I mean, this is my favorite player of the season, personally, to watch.
And I just talked. Funny thing is, I had a short conversation with Mrs. Pompey last night, I believe, on some things that we'll discuss off screen maybe tomorrow. But she's really pumped up about she's got so many relatives. They were tied up in Mount Miguel, and of course now she has Selena. She's going to be following. It'll be her first year. You won't see her at Mount Miguel because she'll be following Selena down at Bonita Vista, as that is her niece, I believe.
Interesting. Well, I just know I'm thinking it all about Jaheim this Friday night. I mean, I guess he hasn't gotten enough attention. I guess Jaheim hasn't got enough attention for all his work this season, but he's got some other good guys around him heading to the playoffs. J.D. Laverdier, 255 yards in that game against the Wolfpack. He's now got over 2,700 yards on the season with 25 touchdowns. And I mentioned, Dave, those other receivers, Junior Anthony Mitchell and Junior Kojo Miller, these are the guys you're going to be throwing to next year. And you know what? They caught 9 passes between them last week. And that's because, the Klingerman brothers, there might have been 4 or 5 Klingerman brothers out there last week, according to Jaheim. He said the whole Wolfpack team was covering him. So,
wow.
And that doesn't surprise you, right?
Not at all.
Well, the Nighthawks could qualify for the postseason with the road victory here. Right now, they're on the cusp. They're in 12th, and a loss could knock them out, could knock them to 13th. So with that 2-7 record, it's a very, very important game for them as well. But for me, it's going to be all about Jaheim and getting that record. I should have looked at it before we got on the show. I think he needs maybe 168. He might even need 180 yards now because we rediscovered. We went back and looked at the record book and saw that Chris Olave is actually the all-time single-season leader with Mission Hills in that great season he had back in, I believe, 2016, and that Malachi Russell was second on the all-time list. But hopefully after Friday night, and even if it's not, Mount Miguel's going to the playoffs, he's going to get more yards this season. The thing is, he might end up with 2,000 receiving yards for the season by the time it's all said and done, because Mount Miguel, they'll have a home game. Now, I don't know if Mount Miguel, it's going to be tough. Whoever plays them, it's going to be tough for Mount Miguel. They need to win that first game, obviously, to get another game. You'd expect them to win. They're going to be at home. But they could be playing the likes of a team like Coronado or Tri-City Christian, which beat up on Mount Miguel. One of the best performances I saw was when Jaheim caught 3 touchdowns in the second half, getting just totally beat up by Tri-City Christian at play after play, and he kept getting up and catching more passes. So they've got more games to go, and I've got Mount Miguel winning this game. I'm sure you do too.
Oh yeah, I think Mount Miguel by at least 14, maybe more.
Yeah. Okay, let's get this done, Dave. Oh, an hour and a half, way too long. I apologize. Our viewers probably love it. I don't know. They probably think it's too long. Who knows? Dave, Mountain Empire was, I believe, the only team that had their game canceled. I didn't check all the Inland Empire teams last week, so I apologize for that. But their game was canceled due to the fire danger last week. I do not think that game is going to be made up. So this is the season finale right here. Mountain Empire is headed for the playoffs. It looks like no matter what, but they have a tough game against Vincent Memorial.
Ooh, yes.
I guess it's possible they could fall out of the playoff picture, but they're big underdogs to Vincent Memorial, probably by at least 3 touchdowns or so. So tough game. I think Mountain Empire is in the playoffs with their 2-6 record. They were in 10th this week. I'm not sure.
Well, they, like we said at the beginning of the year, they're a young team, starting over from scratch. We had Jericho, one of the players of the week last week, and he's their new back, and that's a new position for him. So he was used to doing the quarterback situation. So him being the running back, he's actually fit in pretty well. And then Khalil is just coming right along as far as eventually he's going to be probably a prolific passer for Division 5 teams, but it's I think they need to build up a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. But you got to remember, I mean, you're out there in Pine Valley, you get what you get, really out there. Kind of a similar situation that they get out at Elkhorn Valley, which is why I think they would be I think it'd be a pretty good matchup. Who knows? Might end up a good possibility. But I still have faith. Mountain Empire surprised us many times, and I mean they could pull an upset. But I'll tell you what, I saw Vincent Memorial against Elkhorn Valley after they had been playing. They were pretty much on fire, but they were extinguished by Vincent Memorial that particular game that I saw on Elkhorn Valley soil. Their quarterback, their receivers. I saw some unbelievable athleticism from the running backs to the tight end to the receivers, the defense, the second, everybody, especially that quarterback. Though, even I remember Coach Osborne's quote was, "Have you ever seen anybody so athletic? I have never seen somebody that has that much athleticism, and he was so impressed with the way that their quarterback was playing that game. They weren't able to contain him, but at the same time, he was impressed as a football guy that he was just untouchable.
Yeah, and go ahead, Dave.
Thus, we see the record, and I'm sure his numbers are off the charts too.
Yeah, and I think the key for Mountain Empire this week, you talked about the possibility of playing Elkhorn Valley. The way it's starting to look right now, it looks like they'll probably end up facing the likes of a team like Crawford or maybe Mission Bay or maybe Francis Parker. Those will all be tough games for Mountain Empire. So, like I said, I don't think they're going to go back and make up that game due to the cancellation last week. All right, Dave, you got some sponsors.
Yes, we do. And without them, and we tried to do it last time, unfortunately, it was some technical issues. I do apologize.
No, but it was not some. You forgot, Dave. Don't go blaming me.
No, it was my technical issues on my end. No, but without and I'm going to start at the top.
I have enough issues.
Just the background that some of it anyway that Ramon has, from Retro Sports banners, Retro Sports shirts. They've made some fantastic shirts for us, from polos to T-shirts. Our great patches that we've been giving away that to our players of the week. I just can't thank Matt and Jake enough for, and always being. They got so much on their plate, and they got so many things. They've grown so much, and I walk in there with a couple of shirts and asking for patches. Hey, can you get them done in 4 or 5 days? Yes, we will. Absolutely. We'll write it down right now. They'll take the order down, and I will go there in 4 days, or I'll get a phone call. Your stuff's ready. It's just incredible, the relationship I have over there. Not to mention anybody that is looking for state of the art uniforms, or even coaches gear. I will tell you what, the polos they come up with, you see the ones we wear. I think they're phenomenal, and all your other athletic needs, definitely stop over at Retro Sports, right across the street from the New York Pizza off of Dallas and Fletcher Parkway. But they'll definitely help you out. They know what they're doing out there. Former pitching coach Matt Atkinson from Grossmont and from Monte Vista. And then also Marcarios over there off of 2nd Street. I knew I was going to get it by the end of the season. Favorite go-to pizza place, Pat Villani, and he's been there I don't know how many years. My dad would have it on the tip of his tongue. And so would Mr. Danielson, but we just know it's been there forever. They've been a sponsor with us forever and with the community. They do great with the kids. They are very active in the community as far as athletics are concerned. Same thing with Mr. Berner and Barb and Ron at Nicolosi's down there. Now their location only down on Mission Gorge. Stop in. You know what? I'd recommend any dish, to be quite honest. And like I said, one of these days, and I'm going to keep pressing for it, and I'm hoping he hears it one of these days, that the PPR parties are great, but there's going to be one day an ECS viewing party, and we're going to have our own gig up there. It's coming.
Who would show up to that? Be you and me.
No, it's going to happen. We're not. Ramon doesn't see it yet, but I see it. So one of these days we're going to have one of those, and he'll see it soon enough.
We have trouble getting service. No, we wouldn't. I'm kidding you, Ron.
Anyhow, Alpine Manufacturing, the Coit brothers, and their great coach from Mount Miguel, baseball coach from Mount Miguel, was many years at Granite Hills. Really turned that program around at Mount Miguel, and then even produced us a fantastic. And I couldn't believe he came to us, and he's been one of our best interns yet, and that's Thomas Ringer. Not to mention he can swing a mean bat, and he's still hoping to possibly recruit it or walk on at UCLA. Hey, we definitely want what Thomas wants, because he's definitely somebody that works hard at everything that he does, and he has been producing great content for the website. And again, if you're ever interested in any opportunities increasing your portfolio, if you're interested in whether it's photography, videography, or just plain old journalism, we'd be more than happy to assist you with that and get you some credit. And then who can forget Al's Sports Shop, that's been in Santee forever. They moved locations one time, but they've been there quite a while now, off of Carlton Hills, and right across from Marietta's, who's also been there for quite a bit. But that's another gentleman that's been great with the community, Rob Treadwell. always does a great job on our plaques and our awards for our all-star games that we hold for the boys and girls and the 3-point winners, and sometimes the slam dunk uh, slam dunk winners also at the Bill Dickens All-Star Games, which we will be celebrating our third, hopefully this year, over at the Mount. And I'm sure that Rob will be helping us out there again. But again, for all of your athletic needs and uniforms and all of your equipment, step in and talk to Rob. He'll give you the personal touch. It's almost like a family over there. And then let's not forget our newest guys, and they're getting ready to have their home game. I believe will be November 9th at El Cajon Valley High School, and that's the San Diego Kings, the semi-pro San Diego Kings, former great from 2005. Abraham Muhezi, a great, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play at El Cajon Valley High School,
Greatest.
and or the greatest. We'll even go with the greatest. But him and his Kings will be in town on the 9th of November, and be sure to check our East County Sports page, and we always have the updates on their dates and times, and we will be in support of them, and you will be able to see their highlights and some articles from them about the action in case you do miss it. But if you're in the East County, you need to be in that gym and you need to be checking them out. They put on a spectacular dance show too. They have their dancers also, and you know, supporting such a great team. And then let's not forget, last but not least, Mr. Hoppy Hopgood over at H12 Sports Academy, new location in Santee by the 52. Needed some more room, so he decided he wanted to move out to the Santee area. But I'll tell you what, still great instructors, famous instructors, and let's not forget his world-renowned hit tracks, and the kids just love it there. And he will definitely help your, whether it be your 6, 7, 8-year-old, all the way up to high school, improve their swing and improve their throwing capability. And that is all from us. And on behalf of Ramon Scott, I'm Dave Dickens. Sorry for the extended version, but we had to talk about the World Series as the Nationals are world champions. And we thank you for joining us for this evening after that big bout. Thanks again.
Good night.